Hey everyone, welcome back to the Play Vision podcast. It's your host, Anish Gupta, and I'm here with the legend himself, Ryan Hammer. Ryan, say what's up, man. How we doing?
Man, I'm happy to be here. I know this is a new piece for you guys, new kind of wave of stuff. So I'm excited to be here. I think I'm the second guest, so I'm honored.
Absolutely. And we are honored as well. And I mean, obviously a lot of people know what we do. We're obviously very focused in the basketball space, and it's just so elite to have somebody who really represents like the college side of basketball, at least from a fan's perspective. And it's so surreal. I know I've told you this before, but literally going from like sitting with the guys, watching your trapezoid of excellence videos to now obviously getting the true inside scoop from you is just it's really elite. Like I mean, there's no other way to put it. And that just for me, it's so awesome to have you, dude. And I'll kind of just jump right in and just kind of start bombarding you with some questions if that's cool. Maybe
Sure.
let's start early, like life growing up. I know you're based in the East Coast now. Was that always the case for you? What was it like? I'm sure you were into sports as a kid. Maybe just walk us through that, and then going into college. I know you played soccer, so maybe just walk us through that whole journey. What was it? What was it like, man?
Yeah. Yeah, I grew up in New Jersey, still live there now. I've lived in PA in a couple of places, but mostly centered around New Jersey and the East Coast. I tell people I live at the beach basically when they ask me, like, where do you live? I'm like, I live at the beach, essentially, Jersey Shores. But yeah, I grew up a massive sports fan playing. I played soccer, I played basketball, I played football until my parents wouldn't let me, even though I really wanted to keep playing. I played lacrosse. I played every baseball, like everything besides hockey, because my brother bit a hole through his tongue, my older brother, when he was super young. So I wasn't allowed to play hockey, which is whatever. But I played everything. Grew up in New Jersey also, and between all the sports and living there, I felt like compared to a lot of places in America, at least, like a lot of diversity, especially cultural diversity, and with sports helps you kind of appreciate those things. So that was a huge part of my life, always and still is, traveling and kind of understanding those things. And that's what I like to do at different colleges now. I like to go to different places and parts of the country, parts of the world, honestly. Outside of content stuff, I like to travel a ton. I just think it's cool because leading up into the college space now and every part of America is super different. Getting to experience all these different places and showcase them, showcase the people that are there, and you can kind of feel the different vibes and communities that are at these different places and colleges. So it's been awesome.
Absolutely. I think you already touched on it, but I guess kind of going in, being in the sports realm was probably something that you always wanted to do, and at least playing a sport in college. Like, what, obviously you've been on this side documenting it, but what was it like playing? Like, what was that experience? Obviously, building with the team, young days, like, kind of maybe walk us through that, especially in soccer, right? A different sport.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's given me so much like understanding of college athletics. Being an athlete in general helps you with like so many things, time management, understanding work ethic, and stuff like that. And I also like I'm very adamant about I'm an athlete. Like I still play. I still do all these things. So like being
I
able and
peeped, I
being
peeped the Iowa State shots. I saw it. I saw it, man.
right, but and being physically able to do these things is like a I don't think you need to be able to be an analyst in sports in general because there's ways to go around that. But I just appreciate that about like that I still am able to do that. And so being an athlete in general was great, but learning things and learning about the college landscape in general. I played at D3 level, had D1, D2, D3 offers. The cheapest option was D3, and it was also the best community fit for me and made the most sense. And it was great. I wouldn't trade that for anything right now. But it's been great. It helps you a lot understand just like what goes on in any athlete, even if you put high school sports and just understanding what a team atmosphere is like. I think the college landscape is obviously different where you understand the idea of travel, the idea of balancing classes, living on your own and doing all these things and becoming a young adult and a grown ass man is what I like to say. But it's been great playing anything in college. Any sport kind of teaches you those things. And I was mad small. I was like 5 feet tall going into high school, so I basically just said, like I have to play soccer. I was better at
Yeah.
that anyway, but I had no choice.
Nah, I was on the opposite. I was like kind of tall going in, and then I grew like 2 inches after. I stayed unfortunately at 5'10", and I was like, all right, you know what? I played quarterback a little bit, and then I played lacrosse, and I was just never. I just unfortunately had a couple eye surgeries, and I wasn't cleared
Ooh,
to play anymore.
eyes.
So yeah, it sucked. But I mean, the way like my college experience was more just staying connected with working as a scout, right? Like that was my experience, and I think you touched on it best. Like these kids are really growing into their own bodies, and also just not only physically but mentally as well. And I think like being able to see that in person, it's really cool. Like the team aspect stays with you for life. It's something like that. I've talked to pro athletes about this too. It's like it's just a mindset that you always keep, and you attack everything with it. And actually, like on the tech side, even like in this SF bubble that I'm living in, like people are actually looking for athletes more as like to hire as early hires because of their commitment to their
Yeah.
craft. they work. So it's definitely something that I hope most athletes can take from that as well. Like it's not over after your sport is done. Everyone has an endpoint, whether it's at 41 or it's at, 23. It happens at some
Right.
point. I think, being able to kind of hone in with that skill is something that can take you really far. So maybe you want to transition to, your post-grad life. I know we had talked about this off camera, but post-grad working in sports. I know Prodigy and FanDuel were the two that I
Yeah.
think we mentioned. But yeah, maybe walk us through that. I know that was, a different part of your life to what it is now, but maybe first start there, and then what made you maybe want to pursue content initially, right? I know it was maybe around COVID, and then eventually transition to like full time. Walk us through that.
Yeah. I was working as an intern at Prodigy Sports. Basically, it's an HR staffing firm, just dedicated more to the sports and entertainment industry. It was good. I wasn't doing a ton there. I love those people. Like I've talked to a couple of them over the years, and they're super kind, and they're also great connections, obviously, and they've become friends and stuff. I was intern out of school. I wasn't doing a ton, trying to do like small projects here and there and help out and learn. I definitely learned a decent amount. And then I worked for a startup digital agency doing Google search ads, a lot of data analytics, which really helped me understand the true like ability of, as stupid as it sounds, of Excel and like things like that. Where I didn't like, I learned that in college, but like I gotta be honest, like my college path, I didn't learn. I took maybe 5% of it with me max, like of what I technically learned. And there are obviously things like that, but college for me was a much more social learning experience and whatnot. I'm just kind of finding myself, as people would say. But yeah, I worked there, digital agency. Then I worked at FanDuel for 5.5 years, and then very soon after FanDuel pandemic hit, I started making content like a year later. I was just bored, and I just like made it. I saw other people, like Theo Ash and a couple of people making
That was your
early
inspo. Wow, I didn't. Wow,
like
that's
he was one of them, and I think he's a little younger than I am, but it's not even about the age. It's just like I saw people doing it, and I was like, wow, that's cool. Like this
yeah.
platform seems like there's a community that's like there's a want for this. I knew that basketball and college basketball specifically would always be the end goal there, but I started off posting videos on. I had a whiteboard in my parents' apartment that I lived in. I started off doing like trade packages and NFL like contract and salary cap clearing
Wow.
techniques and like teaching people about how those things work and basically what I would do if I was certain teams in off seasons and how I would clear space and who I would use it for. And then it kind of led into that March Madness like 5 6 months later, and then my account kind of took off a little bit from like 5K to like 20K, and I was like, great, this is what I want to do. Led into NBA draft and scouting. I thought I knew so much then. I've learned so much. I'm still learning so much, but it's grown over the years to a crazy point, and now I'm sitting inside of Chaffetz Arena as one of the guys. Sean Sharma is getting some shots up, and it's wild to say that I'm at this point. So it's been a crazy journey, man.
Absolutely. I mean, a lot of people, everyone wants to work in sports. Like, I think it's like, when people talk to me, it's like, oh, you have such a cool job. And I think people maybe don't realize the work it takes to get there or what it like, it really does entail. And I think you said it best. Like it takes a lot of dedication. It takes a lot of hard work, but obviously the passion for it. And obviously, yeah, since then you've amassed what, like close to 400K across all platforms. So it's really obviously cool to see. But I would say the best part of your content is like the loyalty, especially with college basketball. Like you have a community that goes to you for different things. It's like your trapezoid of excellence, your March Madness predictions, right? Like how you see the game, players that you're interested in. So would you kind of agree with like first that part, and then maybe like what is the story behind the creativity side, trying to grow a sport that like I mean, growing up, like college basketball was always cool, but it was always centered around March Madness. And I think you found a way to make it more year round, make it more of an experience. So maybe talk behind that. Like, what are the things that kind of go through your mind when you're trying to obviously get people into it?
Yeah, and I was one of those people too. Like I'm like, oh, March is here, maybe let's ride, let's rock, and I get that. It still is a fact for a lot of the casual fans and sports fans in America and the world, really. But like the sport is so much fun, and it's gotten to a point where it's become so enjoyable year round, and I appreciate that. So I 100%. But like, look at someone like yourself too. You said about sports, like you want it, like you have to open the lane for yourself. It's not just like sitting there and you just go take it. Like sure, there are ways you can try to find, like you can become a coach, you can become a trainer, you can do all these little things and whatever it is, you can work in marketing and work for a team, whatever that's going to be. But like we both have just like opened up paths for ourselves that weren't there. They weren't just there for us. Where kind of had to make that ourselves and kind of go and take that at the same time. Where it like there was no demand for it until we made the demand for it in a sense. So I commend you for that. Also, you guys do great stuff, obviously, and you're on your way to who knows where you're on your way to your path and your climb. But yeah, I think authenticity has been huge for me. I've always been about authenticity and being transparent. everything. I'll talk negatively about things in respectful manners. Really, authenticity and kindness and compassion, I think, is huge. And those are two things that I think in the world are rare, sadly. And so I've always wanted to kind of stand on that because I appreciate those things from other people. So I've made sure that that's been the focal piece of I'm always open, I'm always honest, I'm always myself. I think the personality side of things has always helped where I'll laugh, I'll cuss, I'll do this or whatever. I like to do the stuff behind the scenes of players like I'm doing here. And like, those things are fun and those things are enjoyable and people appreciate those things and they're never seen before in sports coverage where I think social media has allowed for people to do that. There aren't a ton of people who do that. And I don't think there's anybody in college basketball that does that right now. So that's why I think the demand, people didn't realize there was a demand until I gave the supply and said, oh, wow, I actually do like this. And I never like strategically planned it out. I never said like, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z and be authentic and be this and that. And it's going to get me to here. I just started making stuff and I was like, I'm just going to stay true to myself. I'm going to do what's fun and what's enjoyable. And then things started to click and I was like, oh my God, I can actually make a life out of this. Like, it's crazy. So, again, I keep saying wild journey, but I like having these deep conversations because it makes me reflect a lot.
Absolutely. No, I think you said it best where you got to create your own lane. I mean, even for us, right? Like starting a company at our age around in Berkeley, like, it seemed like it was at the time, it wasn't the norm. Everyone was chasing like that big internship or that big job. And I think, for us to really say, okay, look, we wanted to work in sports and do something, combine our passion for technology as well as it, like, it's something that obviously you have to, you're going left, everyone's going right. So, it's the
Yeah.
path unscathed. There's a lot of things that obviously you have to kind of find within yourself. And, for us, that's, the journey hasn't been all sunshine and rainbows. Like it's a lot of stuff where, different teams that we're talking to, like different places that we're going. We've transitioned from college to a little bit of the NBA now, and it's been, definitely a journey, but it's also been, as you said, like a true learning experience where I just love kind of being, yeah, authentic too, like in the sense that, we're true to ourselves. We know what we can provide, and that's something that, we've had to learn as a company. But I think you said it best personally, where, if you can just be yourself, I think people really, really admire that. And I'm glad you get to do these more inside level things with these teams because it's like, like athletes, and I was talking to CJ about this on my last episode, like athletes get a very weird, stereotype in the sense that like, look, like obviously everyone thinks they're great in terms of physical ability, but like on the mental side, you don't see it as much. I think they sometimes aren't really truly like recognized for that. And, I think through some of your content, you really get to show that side of people, especially through their dedication. So really something that I like. And I think
Yeah,
I'll
and
maybe,
same to you.
oh, yeah,
Same to
please go
you
ahead.
for like, no, I just like the fact that you guys are a brand. Like it's easy for me to be myself because my brand is me, it's my name. But like
Yeah.
you guys have a business that you run, and you could be the business, but you're adding a side to it that I think you're gonna thank yourself so much for 10 years down the line. So
Absolutely. No, I appreciate that. Now, I had to ask you this because this is more just a personal question. I know you've talked about different places that have just been insane. Like, obviously, you went to Iowa State recently, but what's been your favorite place to visit? Like, I know it's probably going to be really hard, but if you could pick one and then one that you maybe didn't like as much, but wish you could go back and see again because you think it could be better this
okay.
time.
The latter answer is absolutely Chapel Hill in North Carolina.
Ooh, okay.
it was it was the first place I traveled to. In my This is the third year of traveling to places professionally, filming stuff
Hmm.
with players.
Yeah.
It was so cool to be there with Armando. That was it was like I started at the top. I started at the very top,
Yeah, Armando.
and
Okay. Yeah, damn.
at Carolina, and it was really cool to be there. It was really cool to walk into the Dean Dome empty. The town is beautiful. I just like didn't have the platform I have now, and I didn't have the full understanding of what I have now. So I would love to go back there, get it to a game that was better. They played Syracuse, who wasn't terrible that year, but they won by like 30, and it was like a blowout. But it was still a great time. It was so much fun. It was awesome. I want to go back there because I need to go back there. It's one of the meccas of American sports in general, and really.
Absolutely.
So I definitely need to go back there. Iowa State is I am truly impartial with the teams and how I analyze. It has a special place in my heart. I am because I've been there for 3 games. The people ride or die for me like nobody else around the country, and I'm a human being. I bounce off of feelings and vibes off of other people's. They're super kind out there. They treat me like royalty. I've seen them play 7 times in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
They're 7-0, and they won at the number one team when I was there. They'd beaten the number two, number nine, like number 14. It's unbelievable. Ames is a special place in my heart, but there's a lot of other places. Madison, Wisconsin, when I went there, people don't know I went there like over 2 years
Really?
ago.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah.
Unbelievable place. The town itself is probably the best town I've been to, and Gainesville, Florida, in terms of the town and everything, was very cool. much more relaxed vibe, and I was like much less overwhelmed in a good way. Like I was, because it's big. It's like
Hmm.
a small fish, big fish, and whatever pond, whatever you want to call it. And it's a big pond there. So I was recognized. I had a really good time there, but I was able to relax a little bit. So that was a nice change of pace. But Madison, Wisconsin, the town itself is the coolest college town I've seen so far.
Absolutely. Ironically, I've actually been to Madison, Wisconsin 4 times, and I'm a Bay Area kid my whole life. So it's insane. It's like I
Right?
actually got, ironically, my only or the biggest college tour I got was actually there. Like I got to see, meaning like
Uh,
the actually college basketball facility. So the staff showed me around, and it's, I mean, these programs, like they put a lot into it, and I think it's really cool when you get a product of like fans truly screaming. Like obviously, Purdue's got a really great environment. Michigan, like all these Big Ten schools, it's so cool to see. So from being a West Coast Cali kid, it was really cool to see that. But
yeah.
yeah, I think the way you talk about Iowa State is that's so cool. Like going there 7 times and seeing that, and obviously, I think you've probably definitely built like an environment out there where it's like you feel comfortable. I'm sure.
Yeah, it's like genuinely feels like a home away from home in a way. It sounds so stupid. I've only been there twice actually. I just seen them play three
Oh, I
times at
see.
home. So
Mhm.
it was Kansas and Houston this past time,
Yes.
Kansas last year, and then I saw them at Players Era 3 games, and
Right.
then I saw them. I happened to visit Purdue when they were playing there, and they kicked the shit out of them. So I don't know what it is. They yeah, I feel comfortable there. I know that whole town. I was hanging out on campus, walking around like Greek Row, whatever they call it, down the frat house and stuff like. I was everywhere names. I know every restaurant, every coffee place now. It's great.
That's so elite. Well, maybe you got to give me some recs. We might have to go out there. I will maybe
Absolutely.
transition. I think so. I will maybe transition. Well, yeah. Last point, I would say. Hopefully, you go to maybe a UNC Duke game at Chapel Hill. I think that would probably be peak.
That'd be
Like,
cool. That'd be cool.
yes. Now I wanted to transition to college basketball questions. Those obviously some that I had, and then also maybe we could get more of a generalized thing. So first, I think I'm sure you've talked about this a lot, but obviously NIL has been a big factor with college athletics, like especially the last 5 years. But I wanted to maybe focus on, yeah, like college basketball, and then especially the last couple. I'll maybe just say something that I've thought, and then maybe you can, maybe say if you agree or if you think it's maybe better or worse for the sport. I think like especially with NIL touching college athletics across all grades, like it incentivizes older players to maybe stay that extra year
Hmm.
rather than like really chasing a one and done or two and done. So you're getting this good level of really good 22 to 23-year-olds that makes the sport a little bit more balanced, and you're seeing a lot more, good teams. Obviously, you're getting the freshmen, and this year in particular, we've seen so many. Like I think this is the best draft class in like a while. So maybe touch on that. Like, do you think NIL overall better or worse for the sport? And then what do you think about this dichotomy of younger and then older guys kind of combining to drive more of maybe a parity in the sport?
Yeah, I think NIL, generally speaking, is good, more positive than negative for the sport. There are natural growing pains, but we've obviously gone beyond the natural growing pains. There have been it's been at a ridiculous level. The
Yes.
negative stuff gets more attention than the positive stuff. So people talk about negative. That's the clickbaity titles, first takes types. Like people just talk about it. They talk about the crazy stories. They're angry. This is what people do now and in the world and of media, and so it is what it is. But you don't hear about the positive stories as much as you hear about the negative stories, sadly. So because of that, I think people get blinded by the fact that the players getting paid as a basis is good. There's so much room that we have to get it to a healthy point, and it might, I don't know, it might not get there for so long, but it is good to have them get paid. It is good. There are just so many issues with the lack of control, and the eligibility stuff isn't even part of it. It's the NIL specifically. Guys getting paid insane amount of money just entices them to just leave and bounce and go, and it doesn't teach them about, as traditionalist as it sounds, about loyalty and things, because that matters, and it matters when they're going to be a professional player. It matters in their family life. It matters in professional. It matters in everything, and little things like that I think are important. Again, it's good, but there just needs to be some kind of regulation and kind of control from the NCAA and leagues and other entities and stuff to kind of get to a healthy point. But yes, it definitely keeps guys around. JT Toppin's a great example. He would have been a first round pick last year. I hope he's out, like
I
all
know.
blessings and prayers up to him, which sucks, but
Yeah.
he is an awesome player. He would have been a late first round pick. Instead, Texas Tech said, "Come take $3-4 million, whatever it is. Let's go win a national championship." And they could have, and maybe they might have, and who knows? But if he didn't get hurt, obviously, but it makes sense and it keeps guys around, which I think is good. That's a positive thing. You want guys to stay and you want guys to have that option, because instead of just jumping to the NBA, and you're seeing a lot of those guys try to come back now because they made that jump too early.
Yes.
Where like NIL,
Yeah.
if and now NIL, right? And now you're going to have less of the, like, people are worried about the eligibility stuff. You're not going to have guys leaving early unless they're damn sure now, which is a great thing. So the two
Yes.
or three players that have been trying to come back, again, you hear about the negative more than you hear about the positive. Think about the 20, 30, 40 plus players that came back because they were getting paid and they were like, I can play in college again and I can still go to the NBA hopefully in the future and those things. JT Toppin's a great example of that. Even the Iowa State guys are a good example of that. We talked about them before. There's a lot of guys, and so it's interesting to, again, the negative outweighs the positive socially and
Yes.
publicly, but the positive far outweighs the negative in terms of actuality and reality.
I think you said it perfectly. Wow, that was a great answer. I think another guy too was like Yaxel Lendenberg this past cycle, right? Was a guy who could have been a first round pick, came back, got some money from Michigan, and now I mean obviously look where they're at. And yeah, I think you put a great spin on it because I was actually going to ask you about thoughts on NBA and G League players coming back to college. It's so cool that you found a way to make it just talk more about the positive rather than the negative because I know people have been bashing on those players and like I think it's Amari Baylor. Hopefully I'm saying his name right, but
Yeah.
like obviously I don't even hate on the players. I think it's just more so of the system. Like it's like that allows these guys to, obviously take advantage of it and try and, come back into college basketball. And I think people are always gonna, maybe bash on that. But I think like you said it best, like what about the 20 or 30 guys? And I don't know if you know this, but I actually talked with some colleges about this revenue sharing stuff. Like they're worried, even though the 20.5 million, it's great. It sets a hard cap. Schools are now what they're doing is they're actually having third party vendors pay these
Yeah.
players on behalf of the school. So it's like it's still not regulated. I'm really curious to hear how they're gonna try and do that. But you're seeing new programs kind of rise from the ashes. Like obviously with football, it was Indiana's been the talk of the town, right? Like even like Texas Tech with football, basketball they've always kind of been pretty consistent. But is there maybe a program that you've seen in particular that has really rised with NIL that you're just like man like where do you like the potential for them is there because of this?
Yeah, I think it goes all over the place. BYU is one that comes to mind. They haven't, obviously the team has been, flop is a bad word to use, but they become super relevant. They have all this money, so they're able to spend it at incredible lengths. Michigan's a great example. Michigan's been very up and down over the last 20 years. They've had ups of Final Four and downs of having their coach get into fights and like getting fired, like all these different things and everything in between. Michigan makes a lot of sense for the best team in the country right now. They might be on their way to a national championship. And Dusty May, you obviously need more than money. Kentucky's a good example of that. You need good coaching, you need good system, you need the right players, but money, you need money to win a national championship. Florida has it. They're another team that's a great example where they, again, have an amazing coach and system that is able to win, but they needed the money to recruit guys like Elijah Martin and Will Richard and Walter Clayton in the portal. That had to happen to be able to do that, to keep guys like Tommy Howe, to keep Alex Condon to come back, which is crazy. There are programs, and then there are even other programs. I'm at St. Louis right now. They have more money than anybody in the A10 up there. Dayton's up there. St. Louis is a program that had a really in 2013 and 14, I think it was. It's actually up on the banners or something. I think they were A10 tournament champions, regular season champions. They went to two back-to-back tournaments. Had like a 9 seed, like a 6 seed, I think, or something like that. So programs like this are a great example also. It's not just teams at the top, but the few in this level and below are very few. But it still is helping some programs like this.
It's ironic you mentioned St. Louis. I didn't even tell you this. In January, we ran like our PPI like algorithm, and St. Louis ended up as sixth in the entire country back then, and we were so confused. And like I think they're ranked 18th as I'm making this. So they're like I mean they could be really scary come March. So it's I mean yeah that was one thing I had to plug right there. But it's as you mentioned, I think you mentioned some really good programs. BYU especially I think is the big one that people are talking about obviously with getting AJ, and then Florida recently. I mean yeah like I think they've always been from a football and basketball perspective just like in this like level, but they're not there in the 2010s, and then at least we finally saw them break the mold in
Yeah.
2025. So I'll maybe touch on like the tech and analytics side. For instance, like your trapezoid, it consists of pace and efficiency, and like I've gotten to see it more from a team perspective how they measure efficiency. So like shot quality, and then where they're doing like basically how they execute plays, where guys are moving from point A to point B. It's more technical, but like from a fan's perspective, what do you think maybe the sport not maybe is missing, but what would you like to see that could maybe improve upon the stuff that you use? Obviously, Ken Palm and Bartovic are the big ones, but what is maybe something that you think you'd be looking for to maybe enhance not only your content but the sport as a whole?
It's a great question. It's a great question. I never thought of it. I am stumped right now. I guess something like maybe more player focused metrics where there are some sources to be able to get that. Synergies access has been quite limited over the last couple of
They've
years.
been
So
limiting it. Yeah.
I know. So being able to get spot up spot up data, catch and shoot versus on the dribble, stuff like that is not easy. There is player specific data you can get all over CB analytics, etc. Like MME, KenPom, whatever, but it's not easy. And I think the player stuff would help for draft scouting. It would help for NBA personnel. It would help bring more attention to college basketball than there already is, because people love the NBA because they know the players so well. It's a player
Yes.
centric league. There's only 5 players on the court versus 11 on a football field at a time, or 22 and then 10, like more than double the number. And there's so many people on a roster on a football team, and you could see their faces. You're closer to them on a basketball court. They get paid more, so they're more entitled naturally, and they talk more. So you know more about them. That's happening with college basketball players because of NIL. You're knowing more about them. They're doing more media deals and marketing deals. There's more storylines about them. But I think understanding their data even more is huge. College basketball analytics is focused on teams first. NBA
Yes.
analytics, I think, is focused on players first. So
Wow, that I can't I thought I could stump you there. You you found a way. That's awesome. I think you
yeah,
really touched on it because so for instance, like tracking data is a big thing in the NBA. Like player tracking data is accessible everywhere. College athletics does not have that. And but I do it's inevitable. So what you're saying, I think like I don't know if you noticed, but I'm literally writing it down because like that is something that I didn't even, think about as like how college is more team focused metrics, NBA is more player because it makes a lot of sense. Like everyone wants to know who's that Cinderella run team, right? But they're not really
right.
focusing on the players as their own brands. But now you're seeing it. Like I would love to know Yaxel's, shots off the dribble. How like he's maybe not scoring 20 points a game, but his impact on the floor is incredible. I mean, these guys are winning by like 20 plus every game, and you want to see it from a more quantifiable standpoint. So I thought that was a great answer to that. And obviously, I think your trapezoid, you found a way to correlate two things. But if you can correlate, more of these individualistic stuff to the players themselves, then you could really get a true sense of how they would do in the NBA, where they would go in the draft. Like that just makes them, more complete. And I think you touched on it really well. So
For
I
sure.
will maybe transition to, the biggest thing maybe outside of the tech side too, like that you want to maybe see changed in college basketball. I know people have talked about more iconic like non-con games in Jan and Feb. Like we're getting Duke and Michigan on Saturday. Like I cannot be more stoked for that.
Yeah.
But I remember I think it was Nick, one of my guys on Twitter, like he was talking about how we could get some iconic rematches of March Madness matchups, right? Like it would be
Mm,
so cool to see maybe Wisconsin and Duke, who like I think they've played once since 2015, if I'm not mistaken. Like some of those like
yeah.
Butler and Duke. Like maybe thoughts on that or anything that you maybe want to see in the sport that you've just been really adamant about.
Yeah, I think the matchups that I would want to force, and it's funny, I was talking to Josh Church about this last night, and he's in agreement, even though he knows he'll take the step up eventually. Like the matchups of forcing small schools to play big schools, because the way
Yes.
the system is built now, that obviously the mid majors struggle to schedule, and that's the Miami Ohio situation and St. Louis and trying to schedule and everything. But they like forcing like Missouri and St. Louis haven't played since '02 or something like that. They're Brian, how far is Missouri from St. Louis? The schools, 2 hours. There you go. Live podcast segment. Thank you. Two. That's two hours, and they haven't played in over 20 years. Like it makes zero sense. URI and Providence, I think, do play, but that's a great example. And Iowa should play Drake. And then when a coach leaves, when Shirts goes to SLU, they should have to play Indiana State the next year. And then if he goes to wherever, they should have to play SLU the next year. Whatever. Like that's how it should be built, so that you have these great stories throughout the entire year, and you're genuinely giving everyone an even level playing field, or somewhat even in terms of scheduling. And it's not easy. And I was with the VCU coaching staff earlier today also, when they were a shoot around. Like they have the same. Everyone has the same problems, and you take what you can get. But that would be one thing that I think needs to change for sure from the scheduling standpoint. There are a lot of things. The eligibility, the NCAA cracking down. I think there should be pipe dream. There should be promotion, relegation, and have leagues kind of tie into each other. I think would be awesome, and that's the soccer fan to me. But it makes sense, except for the teams at the top will never do it. That's never going to happen. That's utopian society. But I have a long, long laundry list of things that I want to change in college basketball, and as the future chancellor, I'll say. But the scheduling thing is one that I know is realistic, and I think that they can do. And then I think the donor and the money stuff, they should have to tie donor money and marketing. Like I understand they do marketing deals on the side. There should be a very hard vetting process of what the marketing deal is and what their tie is to the school. And if it's promised beforehand or whatever that's going to be, there should be a hard salary cap, and there should be a hard salary minimum for each league. Like if you're in the Big East, you have to spend at least $4 million on your roster. You can't spend like, and you have to find the money. Otherwise, we're kicking you out. We're putting you into the like. It should be that simple. It should be
Yes.
as crazy as it sounds. That's where we're going, and that's how you kind of guarantee some level of parity to where we're not seeing 5 and 8 to 10 teams dominate every single year.
That's a great point. I think like the what you talked about, just even regulating the money spent, because like right now a law firm could literally just come in and has no ties to Houston, but they're just like, okay, we're gonna throw you a bunch of money, right? Like, okay, now maybe mention us, have a player post a couple stories on it. Like it's
It's
ridiculous.
bullshit. It's bullshit.
Yeah.
Yeah. The
Why?
Mr. Beast challenge of ECU, he said it. He was like, should I just go make ECU national champions by bringing $130 million? I'm like, this is stupid. It sounds fun, but don't do it.
Yeah, like it's one of those things where it's like, what are your, that's why like people were really interested in us, because at least we have some ties to the sport. We could tie to a team. Like it's some random travel agency. Like what is that going to really relate? So, there's definitely regulations, as you said, on the money side, and then also with, the matchups like scheduling. I think having teams that are really close to each other would be so huge for the program. Like I think it would be really cool to get fan bases involved. Like as you said, that really brings about the team specific side of college basketball. So that's really good. And maybe final question here that I really wanted to ask you, just from a personal side again. Final four, obviously everyone talks about it. Two locks. I think I have a feeling I know what you're gonna say. Obviously they're big on KenPom, but two locks, and then two absolute like sleepers. Someone's that like, maybe it could be a bubble team, but it's like teams that you would love to see, not only like just from a player standpoint, but just from like an atmosphere standpoint, get there. Like who are the
Will
two
they
locks?
have a legit chance to get to the Final Four?
Yes, and then maybe one that
Okay.
you're just hoping for. If like yeah, if you so two
Okay.
locks, two sleepers that you can see getting there, and then one that you're just like, man, if they were there, I need to be there. Like it's gonna be electric. Like well, yeah, what
Yeah.
would
Michigan and Duke are the obvious ones. You kind of like hinted at it, like you knew that was going to be that.
yeah,
I like I don't know if they're playing like this, unless they slip up and skid in the next few weeks. Like they're going to be in the Final Four. They're going to be in the Elite Eight for sure. At that point, they could lose to anybody for sure. But Michigan and Duke would be the two teams for sure. And then I think Virginia is one of them that I love. I think they're built really well. A lot of underrated
interesting.
players and underrated coaching that no one really talks about. They have the two of the best shot blockers in the country. They have four dynamic shot making guards that can match up and be a nightmare for anybody on both ends of the floor. They've been somewhat up and down quality wise, but they've been taking care of business for the most part. I think they're a really, really good team, and I think they can go. And then I think the stories of the St. Louis and the Santa Clara, like those are always fun. They're great in Miami, Ohio. I would love to see Miami, Ohio beat the shit out of everybody and go to the Final Four. It's not going to happen. They're not. It's not going to happen. But it would be so awesome because
Absolutely.
everyone would just absolutely shut up about the strength of schedule stuff and be like, "Wow, look how moronic you guys were saying they shouldn't get into the tournament." So I think Miami would be cool. It won't happen. St. Louis has a wildly outside chance, but if they get a 6 seed, 7 seed, they might play in St. Louis down the road is one of the sites, and it's not their
Yeah.
host, so they could play there. And then all of a sudden they're in the Sweet 16, and then you never know. And my one fear for them is playing against really good athleticism and size. It'll like if they have to play against an Arizona, Michigan, Florida, they will lose that game because of that. But who knows? Maybe one of those teams gets beaten and in the Sweet 16, and they get to play someone else. And I don't know. You never really know. So St. Louis would be awesome.
That's awesome. I was really hoping I could try and sneak in a Cal in there. I know they've finally been on the bubble for the first time in like 10 years. So
They're good. They are fun. They are fun.
yeah, they're a fun team, but as you said, I think of Miami, Ohio would be pretty cool. Yeah, I mean that was pretty much all I had, man. Thank you so much for hopping on, and obviously, keep doing your thing. I know you're gonna keep traveling, and we're less than 30 days away. Like I am so stoked. We've got a lot of things on our side coming out from a consumer facing side as a company, but obviously we're gonna be keep following you, and we're so excited for what's to come, brother. So obviously, thank you so much for hopping on, and then any final thoughts?
No, I appreciate you a ton. I appreciate your support and love, and it was great meeting you and your enthusiasm for everything you're doing, not just the product you're building, which is awesome. And I think you're great for the sport and the landscape. And from my feel, you're a good human being, and that's what I care about most. So I appreciate you a ton, and being on here is awesome. And I know we're going to stay in touch forever. So it's a blessing and an honor, I'll say, as athletes do all the time. But it means a lot to me, your love and your friendship and stuff. So.
I appreciate that, Ryan. Well, yeah, thank you so much for hopping on, and to everybody watching, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.